We met years ago when I was at the State Water Resources Control Board, and you were working. This was your job before this, the one with UC, and you were talking about doing a project for the foundation, California Foundation, down in Los Angeles, about financing. And so, how do people get the money to take these projects forward?
You know, there's a lot of different ways, and it depends a little bit on the project. When you and I last talked about this, there were a couple things going on. One is I had just convened the California Financial Opportunities Roundtable. And we pulled together about 100 of some of the best and brightest from finance and economic development and small business, et cetera, government of all levels. And we were looking at what were the roadblocks to accessing capital. Because if you will recall, Great Recession, 09, 10, 11, it was really challenging to get your hands on capital. So we had this meeting thinking it was going to be a policy discussion, but what it turned out to be was actually we ended up publishing a guidebook on access to capital, because we discovered there were 20 to 30 ways to access capital out there that were functioning here in California, but most people didn't know about them. And that book's still out there. In fact, it's still used quite a bit. But one of the ideas that came up in that discussion was the need for a mechanism that would allow us to start bringing some of our retirement accounts back home from Wall Street for regional investing. And I use that term regional very deliberative because one of the things we've tried to convince people is that a city or a county alone probably doesn't have the scale, although you could argue LA County probably does, maybe San Francisco. But what we're really going after is that regional approach, urban, rural, multiple different sectors, so you've got that diverse portfolio, large enough scale so that it could be professionally managed. And you're talking basically a fund of funds that exists. That's something that's been around a long time. But what was new and unique was something that came from the California Endowment, work they had did on a fund, where they had found a way to open a door for an average unaccredited investor to say, hey, put 5% of my retirement account in that fund. And that to me is literally the holy grail. How can we as citizens in California bring some of our own money back home to invest in California? I get a little tired of it sitting on Wall Street and making folks in New York wealthier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are there funds that we can invest in as Californians? Yeah,
actually there's a few funds started up now. The one we were looking at then was Freshworks Fund that was focused on food deserts and improving access to healthy food. They were using the Vanguard Foundation as their vehicle. The bottom line is you just need a note, an investment note, that can be part of that regional fund. And they had been using Vanguards. We in our recommendation said, rather than having only one available nationally, we should perhaps look into creating regional notes. And regional, again, being several counties. It takes about $250,000 to $500,000, some paperwork, et cetera, to set up that kind of note. And one of the things we've been trying to do is find the right region to really move forward with this. Now, since that time, there have been a few other entities kick up these kind of notes. And I can't name them off the top of my head, but I've ran across references and mentions of them, several. In fact, this is an idea that's really kind of capturing the imagination in many quarters.
So.
Yeah.
Well, particularly now with so much uncertainty in the market and wanting to, people do have retirements. So have you worked with CalPERS or some of the big investors in California?
Well, we've talked with them. The problem you run into with CalPERS or CalSTRS or some of the big ones like that is that they've got some pretty strict requirements about where they can put their funds, and that's a challenge. What I've recognized is that we've got to take a step back and create the large regional vehicle that is large enough and does have a diverse portfolio that is financially stable enough that they could put some of their funds in there. And that's what's missing, is that vehicle.
So that's the barrier.
That's the barrier. And we've worked with a couple places. I provided some grant funding to Valley Vision, who is taking leadership over in the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, 6 counties, something called the Next Economy there, to look at perhaps setting up something like that in that region. I just recently have been in conversations with Ashley Swearingen, who's now with the Fresno Area Foundation, and another foundation and others about that area. In fact, that area is really seriously looking at one. The Fresno Business Council, as part of their work with the Food Commons, has been looking at that type of financing. And we've got a few others around the state that are really approaching it.